Alright, so I'm going to be doing adding, subtracting integer numbers, and integer numbers are whole numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. And one of the main methods in doing this is a number line. So a number line is a straight line that houses these numbers that look something like this, and it goes in the positive direction. And it can also go in the negative direction, like this, which is a big help when you're adding, subtracting these numbers. So we can create equations. So let's say I create a simple equation of 1 plus 2. And doing that in a number line, we're going to choose either the left or the right number. It doesn't matter which one to be our starting point. So I'm going to take this 1 to be my starting point. And I'm going to move to the right 2 spaces because it's 1 plus 2, and I'm going to follow the positive arrow. So I do 1 and 2. So I'm going to get a final answer of 3. So now I'm going to do another equation. However, I'm going to start with and have a negative number. So I'm going to do minus 1 plus 3. So that rule still applies where I can either start with my left or right number, and in doing so, I will either be at the -1 or the 3. And if I'm at the -1, since it's -1 plus 3, I follow that plus arrow. I'm going to count up to 3, so I get 1, 2, 3, and I get number 2. Or I can start at the number 3 over here, and I'm going to go in the negative arrow direction. So I have -3, and then I'm going to go over 1 to the left to get 2. So both ways are valid, and it's whatever way is easier for you to think about that I would recommend using when you're doing this number line for add. So now I'm going to be subtracting numbers. So I'm going to set up 3 minus 2. And you can either start at either number, that still applies, where you can start at the 3, or you could start technically at the -2, because when you're splitting up the numbers, you put them in a box and you put the plus and minus sign in that box with it. So when I was choosing between 1 or 2 for 1 plus 2 equals 3, I technically had a box like this where they were both positive numbers. It's just that when we're writing out a positive number and it's the farthest left, we usually do not put the plus sign like this. So with subtracting, I would say I would only use the positive number, so it's not as confusing. However, you can do it either way, and I'll show either way. So when I start at the 3, and I do 3 minus 2, I'm going to follow that blue arrow for the negative, and do 3 to 2, 1, and then 2 to 1, 0. So I move 2 to the left, and this is going to be equal to 1. However, if I started at the -2, what I'm going to be doing is I can quickly rewrite this equation by flipping both numbers around, where I can have it as -2 plus 3. And the reason it's plus 3 is what I just said with the positive number to the farthest left in the equation usually does not have that plus sign. It's inherently there, so if I were to move the equation around like this, it then shows that plus sign that it had on it. And then I'd start from the -2 and go 3 to the right, or 3 in that white arrow direction. From -2 to -1, 1, -1 to 0, 2, and from 0 to 1, or 3 and get into that one spot like this. So I now have one more big case that you'll find when you're adding, subtracting whole integer numbers. And this is going to be the case of -2 minus a -1. So you can either start at the -2 or -1 spot, like this. And what you're going to do is, if you start at that -2 spot, you want to, since you see the negative, you want to instinctively go this way, but we're not going to go that way. The reason is when I was doing the example 3 minus 2, and I started at 3, and I was going this way in the minus direction, was because it was just 3 minus 2. But when I do -2 minus a -1, like this, I'm already going in the negative direction, and I'm gonna go in the negative direction again, so it's like I'm doing this. Which is weird to think about. I'm going left and another left. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go right for adding, it's just the way how the numbers work. It's hard to explain, but that's the best visual way I can show. And I'm going to do -2 minus a -1 like this to get -1. And the way we show that mathematically in the equation is I do -2 plus 1 equals -1, where when you have a minus and then a negative sign, they usually combine to be a plus sign like this. Not in every single case, but in the majority of cases, it will be like that. And if I were to start at the -1, I would flip around the equation. However, this negative is still attached to it, so it'd be minus -1 minus 2. And again, I have this -1 right here. And I want to go in the left direction because of that -2. However, again, since the two negatives are attached to each other, they're going to cancel out and become a positive. So I'm actually not starting at that -1. I'm actually starting at 1, and then I'm going to do the simple subtraction by going to the left by 2 like this, and then getting a -1. So now that is most of the edge cases and all of the normal cases that you'll experience when using the number line. And I'm going to show you another method on how to add and subtract whole integer numbers that may be easier for you than the number line. So this method is using circles. And the way this method works is I'm going to use that equation 1 plus 2 equals 3. So positive numbers are going to be represented with a white circle, and negative numbers are going to be represented with a red circle like this. So when I'm doing 1 plus 2, I'm going to do one circle for the 1 and then 2 circles for the 2, and then count up all the circles that I have, which is 3. So I have 3 white circles, and that's equal to 3. Now I'm going to do the next example of -1 plus 3. So I'm going to draw the 3 white circles for the +3, and then the 1 red circle for the -1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel out all pairs of white and red circles like this, and then count up what I have remaining. So I have the 2 white circles remaining, which is equal to 2, which is what I got in the previous example. And then the next example, going to be that 3 minus 2, which is the same premise where I'm going to draw 3 white circles, and then the 2 red circles. Cancel out the pairs. Count up whatever I have left, which is that 1 right circle, which is equal to 1, which is what I got earlier. And I'm going to get rid of this example. And the last edge case is going to be that -2 minus a -1. So I'm going to start out with the 2 negative, or the 2 red circles, like this, and then I have that -1, which would usually be a red circle like this. However, you see that negative outside of it, so when you do that, you're going to put a white circle around it, and then get rid of inside. So you have a white circle, and then you're going to cancel the circles out like this, and then you count up what you have left, which is that 1 last red circle, which is equal to -1, which is what we got before. This method could be easier, especially with that last case, on that when you have a negative, you place another circle outside of it, flipping it. But both methods work, and it's a personal preference on which one you want to use when you're adding and subtracting these whole integer numbers. So that'll be it for the video. If this helped you, that'd be